I need you tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and ready, because today's Housewives news cycle is giving us a full buffet. Updates, confirmations, speculation, and a nice little side of courtroom mess. There's been so much swirling around the Bravo universe recently that I genuinely feel like we've been living in a Housewives cinematic universe unto itself. And while we had rumors floating just a few weeks ago, today we have official confirmations that absolutely deserve more than a passing mention. NeNe Leakes, yes, the NeNe Leakes, the woman who is synonymous with the Real Housewives of Atlanta in the way that Beyoncé is synonymous with headliner status, is officially returning to Bravo in the upcoming Ultimate Girls Trip spinoff, or as I like to call it, the Ultimate Road Trip. On top of that, we need to get into the suddenly spicy, legally filed situation unfolding between Kandi and Todd, because it looks like the courtroom strategy is turning into the storyline whether they wanted it to or not. So, with that being said, grab your snacks, grab your tea, grab your emotional support beverage, and let's get right on into it. Before we talk about the confirmation, let's rewind to about 4 weeks ago when the first whispers of a potential NeNe return surfaced online. The Neighborhood Talk ran a headline reporting that NeNe was in negotiations for the upcoming season of Ultimate Girls Trip, which, if we're being honest, felt like poetic timing given how explosive BravoCon had been and how loudly fans were calling for certain legacies to return. Poptings on X, formerly Twitter for those of us who refuse to adjust, had already reported that NeNe was rumored to be one of the cast members quietly being approached behind the scenes. But the kicker in that early reporting was the Neighborhood Talk's confirmation from their inside source. If the coin was right, the queen would return. And let's say this plainly because it needs to be said, and it will always be true. If you want NeNe, you will pay for NeNe. There are certain people in reality TV who are worth what they cost, and she has earned that category. Around that same time, Giselle Bryant from Potomac was also being floated as confirmed, and that alone sent people into a speculative frenzy, because Giselle and NeNe existing in the same filming universe again opens the door to a kind of crossover energy Bravo used to do brilliantly, but hasn't executed at this level in a long time. There was also chatter that Monique Samuels, formerly of RHOP, might have been approached for the project as well. Now again, the Bravo universe can be a maze of half confirmations, strategic leaks, trial balloons, and media tests, so nobody wanted to prematurely celebrate. However, those early reports were not in a vacuum. Andy Cohen had already announced the show itself back in November during BravoCon, which meant development was well underway and offers were either out or in negotiation. So while everyone waited for something on paper, the fans collectively did what the fans do best: manifest, speculate, debate, and dreamcast. And listen, quick side note, because it's related, Monique and I are actually doing a live podcast event, a full brunch ponderosa at the Bethesda Theater, sponsored by WPGC 95.5 with Jamie and Arena Tyler and Alfred and Sherelle Duncan from Love and Marriage DC. So not only is that going to be a little DMV-flavored reunion energy, but it's also the kind of event where tea can easily be spilled if someone is comfortable enough. Now, is Monique going to give up production details while anything is still confidential or actively being negotiated? No. But am I going to test the waters like a well-trained journalist of mess? Absolutely. It's called research, darling. Fast forward to today, and suddenly we're not in rumor territory anymore. The Jasmine brand and reality entertainment TV picked it up, and according to TMZ, we can now say with confidence that NeNe Leakes is returning to the Bravo universe. However, we need to highlight the nuance here because it's not a full return. She will appear on the new series, but only during the Atlanta segment of the trip. The new version of Ultimate Girls Trip, which I maintain should be called Ultimate Road Trip because that's essentially what Bravo is pivoting toward, will feature legacy housewives, current housewives, and future housewives, and will debut later this year with episodes streaming the next day on Peacock.
Now, here's the thing that made me laugh because it's so real. Someone commented, "Baby steps, we'll take it." And another person added, her episodes will have the highest ratings, the undisputed queen of reality TV. Give the people what they want. And honestly, let's call a spade a spade. The people have been wanting Nene. Whether you're Team Kenya, Team Portia, Team Kandi, Team Cynthia, or just Team whoever's right that day, there is no version of Real Housewives of Atlanta's legacy that doesn't include Nene at the center of the cultural impact discussion. And to be even more direct, there is no Bravo legacy without her. Bravo can pretend, the executives can spin, the fandom can debate, but the cultural imprint is not debatable. Even in her absence, she remains the reference point. That's not just celebrity, that's archetype. Now, the natural question becomes, what Nene are we getting? The glam Amazon? The comedic straight shooter? Lemon pepper Nene? Scooter riding Nene? Is she dipping lemon pepper wings in ranch while sipping a Coca-Cola and giving us confessionals that double as memes? Or will she be a calmer, wiser, post-litigation Nene who has gone through real life and emerged different? There's no definitive answer. And honestly, I think part of the magic is that we won't know until the cameras catch it. People evolve, people heal, people age, people adjust to their current seasons, and Nene has gone through enough life since leaving Bravo that it would be unreasonable to expect her to behave identically to 2012 Nene. But I am hoping, truly, deeply, that we get a sliver of unfiltered lemon pepper Nene, the messiness without malice, the humor without producers forcing catchphrases, the natural charisma that made her a breakout star long before Bravo understood they had stumbled into lightning. And there's another reason I wanted her and Giselle in the mix together. Charisse, also RHOP, once claimed that Giselle had said she was meant to be the new Nene, not word for word, but paraphrased enough to imply the sentiment. Now, whether that's compliment, ambition, or miscommunication, I don't know, but the idea of those two sharing screen time, sitting across from each other, sipping beverages, and politely, or not politely, evaluating each other's place in the hierarchy, that's television. That's the kind of chaotic diplomacy Housewives was built on. Now, let's talk briefly about the format change, because this part is important. The original Ultimate Girls Trip format, where the network flew housewives to a destination villa for a week of concentrated chaos, appears to have bumped into a legal obstacle. The Morocco season, the one with Brandi Glanville and Caroline Manzo, has yet to be released due to whatever happened during that filming. Reports have framed it as non-consensual physical contact allegations, and Bravo has been silent about whether that season will ever air. So from a business standpoint, pivoting away from that anthology format makes sense. If litigation is ongoing, it would be easier to shift the brand and rename the product than continue a format that is actively being scrutinized. Hence, the road trip premise. Housewives traveling city to city, meeting housewives from those cities, sharing nostalgia, comparing franchises, and offering that cross-pollination Housewives fans have always liked when it's done well. And mark my words, they are going to use this show to introduce new franchises too. They mentioned future Housewives, and Rhode Island has been in development limbo for a while, so don't be shocked if that's where they slide them. Speaking of Atlanta, the upcoming RHOA season is already filmed, and I'm actually excited for it, largely because K. Michelle has been added, and that alone is enough to shift the energy. K. Michelle and Portia in the same ensemble is something I would have never predicted in 2018, but now that the timeline has given it to us, I want to see how they navigate each other. And speaking of Portia, baby, on Traitors, I won't spoil anything for those who haven't watched, but let's just say she did not last long. It was giving confusion, chaos, and question marks in the best possible reality TV way. Meanwhile, Candace, Phaedra, and Lisa Rinna played traitors like they were born in castle basements with cloaks on. Michael Rappaport, on the other hand, agitates my spirituals. He always has.
I don't know what it is. I've tried to analyze it, I've tried to intellectualize it, I've tried to meditate on it, but sometimes your spirit just says no and leaves the room. Now, let's pivot briefly to the Kandi and Todd situation, because this is where the court filings enter the chat. Kandi filed a motion to seal their divorce records, arguing that public access to the documents could negatively affect their 2 minor children. On its face, that is a reasonable request. Many couples ask for confidentiality during divorces to avoid unnecessary media intrusion. However, Todd filed a motion opposing that request, essentially arguing that Kandi has already discussed the breakup publicly, online and in interviews, and that he has remained largely silent. His attorney argues that Kandi voluntarily placed the proceedings into the public domain and is now attempting to control the narrative by sealing the documents. And listen, that is messy. That is courtroom strategy wrapped in PR, wrapped in emotional subtext. However, but before we dive straight into this piping hot kettle of peach-flavored tea, go ahead and tap that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and if you're feeling extra supportive, join the texting community. The links, as always, are chilling down in the description like Sheree waiting on her joggers for September, but maybe spring. Now let's get comfortable and begin, because this Real Housewives era, it's giving content, and I'm ready to spill every drop. Now, first things first, let's set the stage for those who may not have been tuned in. This past week's episode of RHOA wasn't just entertaining, it was what the Bravo fans like to call appointment television, and those are rare these days. For the last few years, Bravo audiences have been a little spoiled. We've had entire franchises crash, burn, reboot, and claw their way back to relevance. So when something like RHOA manages to pull the audience's attention again, people notice. And the numbers proved it. When we checked over at TV Deets, the stats revealed that this episode pulled over 1 million live viewers, making it the first episode of season 14 to break that barrier. That alone is impressive considering how fragmented TV viewership is, now that everyone streams, pauses, rewinds, and watches on their own schedule. When you get 1 million people to sit down live at the same time to watch a group of Atlanta women read each other for filth over dinner and confessional interviews, that's cultural impact. But wait, because the tea gets hotter. Immediately after the episode aired, Marlo appeared on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen. And honey, that episode did numbers too, around 603,000 viewers. To put that into perspective, WWHWL usually floats somewhere around 300K to 400K viewers on a regular week, so Miss Marlo Hampton, newly minted peach holder, did exactly what Andy likes his housewives to do. She brought numbers. And in Bravo world, numbers mean storylines, and storylines mean contract renewals. So we have to acknowledge something here. The audience is clearly paying attention. Now, whether they're tuning in because they love Marlo, or because they're hate watching, or because they just needed to see what the hell happened between her and Kandi, that's up for debate. But the fact remains, the people were in the room. And when the people show up, the drama has a way of growing into something bigger. Now let's revisit the moment that lit the fuse, because Marlo Hampton did not come to play. She came to audition for the Shady Olympics, and Sheree was standing right next to her holding up the scorecards like she was the Russian judge. During the episode, Marlo decided to discuss Kandi, and not in a cute "I love that for her" way. She went straight for the personal. She started by calling Kandi the money mama, and then said Kandi had a whole daddy daycare team and somehow lacked the heart to help other people. Now pause, if there's one thing Kandi Burruss has receipts for, it's helping people. The woman practically bankrolls half the cast's music career attempts and restaurant dinners. But okay, we'll continue. Then Sheree, always ready to sprinkle seasoning on someone else's plate when hers is empty, added she's for herself. And again, okay girl if that's the route you want to take. But then Marlo accelerated. She did not just ease into the shade, she slammed her heel on the gas pedal and let it rip. She said, and I quote, "First of all, Kandi was a hoe, okay? She slept with everybody for free. That punani was bad. That punani wasn't good. And that's why you around here got a date underneath your tax bracket." And while the audience was still trying to recover from the sudden decapitation, Sheree whispered, "Preach," like she was in the Church of Messy Opinions, where Marlo apparently preaches gospel on Sundays. And as if that wasn't enough whiplash, Marlo turned her attention to Kenya Moore. She started in with Miss USA and yeah, F you. You was a video hoe. I don't know nobody that was a video hoe. You went through every rapper and still didn't get a ring. And again, Sheree chimed in with her favorite one-word contribution to the dialogue, facts. Now, I need you to understand the context. This wasn't light shade. This wasn't petty teasing. This wasn't throwing light crumbs for fans to nibble on. This was a fully catered buffet of insults, accusations, and personal digs served with zero remorse. It was the kind of shade that makes you want to press pause, take a sip of water, and make sure you didn't hallucinate the conversation. And you could feel it in real time. This wasn't just Marlo talking. This was Marlo talking like she had something to prove, like she felt she needed to stamp her presence on that peach and mark her territory. There was an energy behind it that felt intentional, like she wanted Bravo to know she could deliver a storyline on her own, without Nene, without Phaedra, without Portia, without being the friend of who pops in with designer labels and one-liners. This was her swinging for the fences.
Now, fast forward to after the episode aired. While social media was choking on the shade inhalation and Bravo fans were typing essays on Twitter and TikTok about whether Marlo had gone too far, Kandi and Todd were out in the real world doing what they do, attending award shows, working, networking, existing in spaces their storyline critics occasionally only imagine being invited to. An interviewer from Where Is the Buzz managed to get a minute with them and asked about the comments. And let me tell you something, and write it down thrice. Kandi Burruss may not be the loudest responder, but she is never unprepared. When she's quiet, that means she's curating. When she speaks, it's intentional. When asked whether she was impressed with the shade, Kandi smiled that bless your heart southern sweet smile and said, "Marlo tries. Bless her heart." Now, if you're from the South or you've lived in the South, you already know that bless your heart is not a compliment. That is a verbal obituary for your credibility. It's sweet, it's polite, and it translates to, you attempted something and it did not land. Then the interviewer asked if Marlo had reached out since the episode aired and went viral. Kandi didn't blink. She said, "Of course not, but honestly, I'm glad she didn't, because I just saw today's episode and she's still saying the same things. So I'm like, oh, okay, so this is something she's been saying on the show that I wasn't around to hear. She's going to keep running this BS. We don't even need to talk." Now that right there was a power move. There was no screaming, no dragging, no insulting. It was a surgical read. Kandi positioned Marlo's behavior as a storyline strategy rather than something personal. And when you do that, you take the venom out of the attack. You say to the world, I see you, I understand your motive, and your motive does not destabilize me. There's strength in that. Then the interviewer pivoted to Sheree, because Sheree had been acting as Marlo's hype woman the entire time, like a backup dancer who suddenly got upgraded to choreographer. They asked Kandi what Sheree has been giving this season, and Kandi, without even hesitating for a breath, said she's been giving played. She's been giving played by Tyrone. Now that line deserves a museum exhibit, because it was not only accurate to Sheree's storyline, it was a gentle reminder that you cannot be in the front row cheering for someone else's downfall when your own plotline literally involves a man leaving you waiting on a Philadelphia sidewalk like an Amazon package marked delayed. Then we arrive at Todd. Oh, Todd. Now, Todd is a Scorpio in how he responds. He doesn't yell, he doesn't thrash. He analyzes, then he cuts.
When asked about how he felt about the comments, Todd said, "It's hard to watch the episode and they talk crazy about you, but I'm really good though. I'm confident in my skin. I'm cool. You can talk crazy about me, but for me it's like, my wife has contributed so much to this franchise, and the stuff they're saying shows where they're not at, and what they want, and what they're reaching for, so I'm good." That's not just a response, that's a door-closing statement. He reminded everyone that his wife is one of the pillars of the franchise, and then he framed Marlo and Sheree's commentary as aspirational envy. And again, no explicit dragging, just implication, and implication is often louder. Now, here's where the tea kettle whistles louder. This isn't just about insults, it's about hierarchy. Housewives franchises always have a hierarchy, whether spoken or unspoken. On RHOA, with Nene out, Portia out, Phaedra out, and Cynthia out, the power structure has shifted. Right now, the two longest-standing titans on screen are Kandi and Kenya. They've both lasted through cast rotations. They've both survived reunions. They've both still got fan bases. And the network respects longevity, because longevity equals consistency. Sheree is an OG, yes, but she is an OG with absences. She exits, re-enters, exits again, re-enters again. There's legacy there, but there's also instability. Marlo is brand new as a peach holder, and peach holders are expected to carry storyline weight. So if you view this season from a chessboard perspective, you can see the moves forming. And Kenya seemed to notice too, because she posted a photo online of her and Kandi with the caption that basically said, "Everybody wants to be us," a statement that wasn't subtle, wasn't gentle, and wasn't accidental. Now, if you've watched Housewives long enough, you know one thing. Bravo never edits multiple weeks of shade for no reason. When they let the storyline simmer, it's because there's a reunion payoff or mid-season explosion waiting to detonate. And honey, based on what we already know, Kandi and Marlo have a blow-up coming, and it's not a little tiff. It's big. Big enough that you can feel Kandi holding her breath and saving her ammo for when Andy Cohen calls "roll the clip" at the reunion.
And let me tell you something even more interesting. Fans suspect this is not even the full scope of what Marlo says this season about Kandi. And if that's true, we're just getting the appetizer and the entree hasn't been served yet. I genuinely wanted to believe this split would resolve amicably, but this filing tells us we are not headed in that direction. Not quickly, anyway. As with all divorces, there are 3 battles being fought simultaneously: the legal battle, the narrative battle, and the emotional battle. And unfortunately, when you are public figures, the narrative battle often spills into public whether either party originally intended it or not. The fandom has already split into factions. Some agree with Todd that you can't publicly frame the breakup and then seal the documents. Others agree with Kandi that protecting the children outweighs public curiosity. Honestly, both can be true, and that's what makes it sad. So to bring this all full circle, Bravo is once again playing chess in the background while the fandom plays Clue in the comments. Nene Leakes is officially back, even if only briefly, and that alone shifts the energy of the franchise landscape dramatically. The road trip format is an interesting pivot that might actually end up benefiting Bravo in the long term, especially if they use it to test new franchises and re-platform ex-housewives in a less risky environment. And meanwhile, Kandi and Todd's divorce has crossed into legal territory that will likely inform the public dynamic for months to come. As always, I want to know what you think. Do you believe Nene's return is a trial balloon for something bigger? Do you think Giselle and Nene will clash, bond, or politely side-eye each other? And where do you land on Kandi versus Todd in the filings? Sound off in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.